Welcome to Industry Week 2023. Make some noise. I said make some noise. All right. Welcome to Question Time with Williams Resolve. In today's session, they'll be talking about all things esports. But rather than me telling you all about what they're going to talk about, they'll do that in a few moments. Remember to mash the hashtag IW23 for the opportunity to win a £50 Amazon voucher. Oh my, this is the fourth time. A £50 Amazon voucher. That's just pants. I love the energy and I hate it at the same time. Folks, make some noise for the team at Williams Resolve.
I don't think so. Solid start. Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Simpkins. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Resolve, who are an esports team that are partnered with Williams Racing. I can hear myself now. Jin really knows how to whip up a crowd. It's a few times I've been here now and he's always full of beans, isn't he? So we're going to talk a little bit about various different elements of running an esports organisation. So I'll talk to you a little bit about us first. I'll tell you about my role, about my experience in esports, and about the current, the current climate in esports, how it is at the moment, which is pretty dire, to put it bluntly. But we'll talk about how we're going to solve that as an industry as well, because it's not all doom and gloom. There is light. I have cheated slightly today. I was supposed to. Jin rang me up and said, "Can you do a 2-hour talk at Confetti about esports?" And I was like, "Probably not." I love the sound of my own voice better than anyone, but I don't think I can talk for 2 hours without everyone, falling asleep. So I've brought along some guests who are the other members of the team. So do you want to introduce yourselves now? Do you want to do that now?
I want you to do it.
You want me to do it? Oh, no. You're cheating. Okay. I'll do it in the order that we're speaking then. So this is Ewan Ingram, otherwise known as Tadpole. He is an ex-Rocket League professional player, world finalist, Commonwealth gold medalist. Yeah, I've had to. And now he's our Rocket League team manager and coach now that he's completely washed. We've got Alex Davis, who is otherwise known as AJ. He is our head of performance, who basically focuses on everything outside of the game. He'll talk to you a lot more about that and definitely do it a lot more justice than I will. One of our players this morning called him a what?
A yoga merchant?
A yoga merchant. So it's definitely more than that, and he'll talk you through all that. Sat next to me is young Matthew, who is his first time public speaking, so make sure you give him lots of attention and praise. He's very nervous, bless him. That's why he sat next to me. And then Jonas, who's wandering about with the camera, is our head of creative, and he'll talk to you about all things creative, really. Jonas works more than anybody else at Resolve, 100%. And obviously, even whilst we're doing a talk, he's still working. So he'll sit down eventually, and I'll go and take some photos. We'll do a bit of a role reversal. So let me tell you a little bit about Resolve, for starters. So we were founded in 2015. We started life as a Discord community for League of Legends coaching. That's all it was. It was not professional esports. It was for people to come in and to learn to get better at League of Legends, which is still something that we are pushing. I'll talk to you a bit more about that when we talk about sort of diversification in esports going forward. But yeah, 2015 started as a Discord community, and then in 2020 was when we started getting into professional esports. And we started in League of Legends, again, because we were already a League of Legends community, so that made sense. And we were in the UK League Championship, as it was known at the time, and then went on to the NLC, which is the Northern League Championship. In 2021, so the year following, we partnered with Williams. If people don't know who Williams are, they are a Formula One team who are doing better this season. If you follow F1, very. All right. Don't start over there. I can see a Fnatic jersey. We'll fall out. And we partnered with Williams Racing, went into Rocket League, which was has become our bread and butter, really, where we are strongest and where we're pushing the most. And at the moment, we have 6.5 full-time staff I was trying to think who the half was, but it's a graphic designer that we don't have. Don't apply, by the way. I can't read any more applications. Honestly, 200 we've had overnight, and yeah, my head's mashed. So yeah, 6.5 full-time staff we've got now. These guys plus graphic designer and also administration manager, which amazingly that's something you need in esports because otherwise we'd be breaching GDPR and all sorts. Yeah, nightmare. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. This young shocked man here behind me. Oh, where am I? This horrible photo here. So this is where I started life in esports. So in 2015, I played a game called Rainbow Six Siege, and I was a professional player in that. And now I joked about Tad, but I'm even worse at the game now. So, so that's where I started. I quickly realised that the kids coming through were way better than I was. I didn't have the time to play, and I was just bad at the game, getting worse and worse. So I transferred into managing. So I started managing the team, and I created a brand called Cognate, which is this t-shirt printing business going on there, just obviously clearly done with an iron. And things have progressed a lot since then. So from there, I went to run an esports team called Barrage, who had a very strong history in Call of Duty, 100% record against Optic Gaming. We only played them once, we beat them once, so. We had one of the best Hearthstone teams in the world before Blizzard killed that esport. We had League of Legends in both the UKLC, NLC. We won the Spring Open in the NLC. I've got a very nice trophy at home to prove it. And we also qualified for the major in RLCS Season X, which was during COVID, so everybody was online. It was a weird season. And we qualified for the major for that. Shortly after that, I was approached by Resolve, who were an existing team at the time. So this was in 2021. Yeah, it was just before the Williams deal. And they basically wanted to buy Resolve. They wanted to take our spots in the NLC, which was the top league for League of Legends in the region at the time, and basically take the league spots and socials and etc. So I joined Resolve as an advisor after that sale went through, and quickly basically became the operations lead for Resolve. So I was managing the day-to-day business of Resolve. Alongside that, I was also full-time as a police officer. That was my full-time job. Police sergeant probably at the time. And then in September last year, I left the police and became the full-time COO of Resolve. So a very different career path for sure to the one that I was in before. So my job now basically involves running everything at Resolve. So I oversee everything, whether it be performance, whether it be Rocket League, albeit Tad kind of has the final call on who we should sign and things like that, because otherwise it'd be pointless signing him, you know. Obviously oversee socials and marketing and all that sort of stuff, creative with Jonas, a bunch of fingers in very different pies. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. I think that is something that you have to admit when you're in esports. You can't know everything. You have to learn from the people around you, and you have to surround yourself with people that know what they're talking about in that respective field. So I am not a fountain of all knowledge, which troubles me just to say. And I'm sure these guys will argue otherwise, that I claim to be. So yeah, so that's me. And I'll talk to you now about the issues in esports and how we're going to solve that in the next sort of 12 months, 2 years. But here's a quick video that I worked on for Barrage not so long ago. Just a bit of a highlight reel, a bit of a throwback. You're looking for yourself now, aren't you? was me just having a bit of a reminisce there. That was all that was for, to be perfectly honest. But a lot of the stuff that went on there, that's obviously 5 years of work basically condensed into 30-second video. And a lot of memories. AJ worked with myself at Barrage, so I've just called it Barrage. I've never called it that before in my life. So, and now I'm going to talk about basically my area, I guess, of expertise, and then each one of these guys will talk to you about their area of expertise. So, 2023 is very much a make or break year for esports, for a number of reasons. So the problem at the moment is, as we're seeing generally across social media, across the esports market, is that teams are falling all over the place. We are getting obviously a significant amount of layoffs across esports. So with 100 Thieves laying off staff, The Guard the other day basically laid off their entire staff. Rick's closing down, a number of other UK esports teams closing down. And obviously there's a big list here, which I have no idea who this person is, so I'm not saying follow them by any stretch of the imagination. But this is a list of just 2023 so far, bearing in mind we're two and a bit months in. These are the staff cuts across esports at the moment. And the reason that we're seeing this is because, for this reason here. So a number of things, basically. A lack of sustainability across esports. So esports has very much been reliant for the last, well, since pretty much its inception, on sponsorship, on how much money you can bring in from your Steel Series, your HP, your Dell, whatever. How much those brands are going to give you to work with you for the season, 2 years, whatever. And I think I was at an event the other day where it's talking about the that money, the money that esports teams generate, is still between 70 to 80% is from sponsorship. So very, very heavily reliant on sponsorship still. So that's one of the main reasons that esports is falling at the minute, because this quote here, the worst consumer economy in the last 5 years, is from Steel Series, about what they're experiencing at the moment from the economy. And one of the reasons that brands across the board are basically cutting marketing budgets, and therefore there is a reduced pool of money for esports teams to tap into. And as such, obviously, esports teams are having to make cuts. They're cutting teams, they're cutting players, they're cutting staff. And then the next one is a lack of transparency, which is kind of linked in with both IPOs failing and VCs, which is venture capitalists, being more cautious entering esports. So people, there is very much an idea in esports that, or there was, that you could tell anyone anything and they would come in, people just wanted to invest in esports because they wanted to be involved. However, that bubble has kind of burst now. People are realising that actually there isn't that many ways to make money in esports for esports teams, or there traditionally hasn't been. We are starting to see diversification, but venture capitalists are more aware of that, so they're less likely to invest money. So we're seeing less investment in esports, generally speaking. Of course, there's still huge money going in places. And then IPOs are failing. So I've given 2 examples here. FaZe, their share price has dropped through the floor, and one of the big reasons for this is a lack of transparency. They said they were going to earn some ridiculous amount of money, and then it turns out to be like a quarter of that. So their share price fell through the floor. Obviously, with the current economic climate as well, that's another reason that the share price has fallen. So a general lack of transparency, a lack of being truthful about what esports is. So for I guess for the purpose of that, the money in esports and the way that esports brands will make money from investment, or how investors will make money from investing in esports teams in particular, is the long-term growth of that brand, right? We are creating the next Man Uniteds, the next Man City, Barcelona, Real Madrid, whatever team you support. We're creating the next versions of those, right? Global brands with millions of fans across the world. However, we're not there yet, and that will require investment for a long period of time. And I think what has been sold to investors in the past is that you can come into esports, you can invest, and then leave in 5 years' time with 10 million more quid than you invested. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. And it's been a lack of transparency across the market. And then the last one is players and agent expectations rising. So we're seeing a more and more player agents getting involved, and Tadpole's shaking his head because he's not a fan of player agents anymore. You were when you were a player, though.
Well, yeah, more money.
Yeah, but basically players want more money. Agents are pushing those expectations up about what players should be paid, and that is not in line with how the market is currently. So the money that esports teams are generating is obviously coming down, and the expectations are going up, and obviously there needs to be some balance in there. So what is the solution? And initially I was just going to put David Beckham just shrugging on this slide, but I decided to actually give some solutions. So diversification is the number one way that esports teams need to make money. Esports was invented as a marketing scheme for publishers, right? So Riot Games, for example, they started doing esports because it helped them make more money in the game, helped them sell skins, helped them create more avenues for them to make money. And esports was marketing for League of Legends, if that makes sense. So esports teams kind of forgot that when they started. They forgot that that was the reason that esports existed, and they forgot that they need to have some other products in order to market. So we obviously have merchandise and things like that, but that generates a tiny amount of income in comparison to a lot of other things, especially in comparison to sponsorship. So what we're doing, which I'll talk a little bit about, is one of the things we're doing is we're running a coaching platform. So we obviously had we started as a Discord community for coaching. We're going to turn that into an actual platform similar to your Gamer Senseis and whatever else, but it's going to be a mixture between sort of Gamer Sensei and Skillshare, and bring in high-level coaches in that people want to work with. So that's one way. We'd see here from Pete from Endpoint. I keep looking over here because this is where it is over on my screen. Pete talking about new businesses that they're generating for Endpoint, Team Endpoint. And one of the things that they're doing is building a huge media studio, which they're going to rent out to people, boot camp space that they're going to rent out to people, and generally trying to make more money across the board. So using those spaces for their own teams, of course, to improve what they do, but then also renting those out to make money. And then, unfortunately, one of the big things that's going to have to change is some of those organisations are going to have to disappear. We're obviously seeing the Guard, potentially, and other esports organisations. And unfortunately, those that fail to diversify and make it through the next sort of 12 to 24 months, those will be the organisations, the ones that make it through will probably be fine because they will have had to diversify to stay alive. So unfortunately, some will have to go in order to have a bigger market share for those that remain. And then more transparency, which we talked about before, and then developer support. So when we were in UK League of Legends, the LVP were running the UK League of Legends, and we had an agreement with them where we did X amount of content, X amount of social media posts, promoted the league and what have you in certain different ways, and they would pay us a stipend for the season. That is very rare in esports. We are obviously seeing more rev share models in terms of in-game items, so Rainbow Six Siege, Rocket League, which we're in obviously, and you generate revenue from those items. Obviously Matt doesn't believe this stat, but there's apparently 80 million people that play Rocket League every month. So 80 million people could potentially buy your decal in game. I don't think we've sold 80 million though, but that would be great. And then, yeah, so those are some of the ways that we can basically survive the next 12 to 24 months as esports teams. I'm going to try and stop talking now to let Tad talk, and then we'll go from there. Tad talk is a bit of a meme, by the way, because Tad loves to go on rants, so just beware of that. And we briefly talked about this, but Resolve specifically, we're starting a production company. Hi, Jonas. I don't know whether we're allowed to talk about that, actually. Oh.
No, stop.
We're starting a production company. So basically, we obviously already make content. We have space that is, I'm not allowed to talk about that either. Well, we've got space coming as well that we can use to create content and also for our teams to boot camp from, etc. And we'll be able to rent those out. And basically the idea being that we will be able to make content for other people as well as ourselves, and therefore do exactly what we're already doing, still spend the same amount of money, but also generate some revenue. And the problem that we've got at the minute is, as Resolve, other teams don't want to hire another team to do their work for them. So we're going to create a separate company in order to do that. And again, sustainable titles, I talked about Rocket League only going into esports titles that make sense. And the last one is don't be silly. Basically, don't spend money that doesn't need spending. Hire the right people. and that's what esports needs to do in 2023 and beyond in order to survive. We will have. Do you want to do it at the end? I mean, we can have a Q&A now, which is specifically around those issues if people want, or we can say all the questions to the end. I think we did plan to do it in. So if anybody's got anything, feel free to ask. I've tried to skim through that a little bit because obviously there's a few of us, and if I talk for an hour, then everybody will be asleep for one. So.
Hi there. With the kind of backing that Williams now has with Doralton Capital, obviously in the F1 series, do you see kind of more investments from actual sports teams going into more esports areas? But even then, we can see that with the Guard obviously being owned by the Cronkies, and yet they have Arsenal, the Nuggets, the Rams, and yet they've killed the Guard. What's your view on it all?
I think the Guard were a victim of their own success to some extent. I think they spent way too much money that they were just not able to sustain. And obviously with the way the market is, I think the investors have gone, we need to pull this back quite a lot in order to actually be profitable or at least sustainable. I think just for transparency, we're not owned by Williams. We're just in partnership with them, so we're Resolve in partnership with Williams. But I do think that we're going to see more and more sports brands get involved in esports because they are typically trying to appeal to an audience that they are not reaching. They are trying to reach a younger audience, especially in F1. You know, they're seeing a huge increase in viewership because of things like Drive to Survive. But they want to engage that audience now, that younger audience, which they can't necessarily do without doing it in esports. And there's obviously other ways as well, but I think that's why we'll see more and more teams get involved in esports as a way to market to that audience.
Hi. I was wondering if you thought that esports overall generally is overvalued, because hearing numbers like to get into the League of Legends franchise or the Valorant one where it's $10 million, or in 2017, I believe, when the League of Legends, the North American League of Legends franchise league started, and Huni was getting, I think, something like $2.4 million over 2 years. It's like crazy numbers that don't seem to make any sense. I also have, I know someone that owns a esports team that was also, we had a conversation about how easy it is to be overvalued, to get things like sponsorships and things like that, and just kind of talk about big numbers at board meetings.
Yeah.
So I was just wanting to know your
perspective. 100%. I think that's been part of the problem. And when we talked about transparency before, I think esports was overinflated as a market, and people put ridiculous values on things that perhaps haven't now panned out. We're obviously seeing the franchise leagues doing really poorly, especially look at the CDL and Call of Duty League and Overwatch League. Activision Blizzard have absolutely killed them. And obviously the teams in Overwatch League in particular are now seeking compensation from the league for the amount of money that they paid to be part of that. So, I think we'll see a correction across the board in esports to level out what those valuations are. That being said, we're still seeing the group that's behind Rogue, I can't remember the name, Rogue and Koi, Rect Global, the buyout that's going on for them at the moment is supposed to be some ridiculous amount of money. So maybe I'm completely wrong. But I think venture capitalists are becoming more wise to that for sure. So I guess we'll see. Time will tell a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you think this is a global problem that's happening, or is this more of a Western issue? Because I feel like a lot of the conversation is that in places like Korea, like China, Singapore, Philippines, or whatever, both culturally and financially, it's a lot more sustainable, and A, it's been around for longer, and B, people just seem to have more of an idea of what's going on. So do you think there's ways we could sort of implement the way they work within esports and the way that they implemented into culture into Western esports to help fix that issue?
Yeah, I think the issue with esports teams is global. There is no teams that are really sustainable. You know, we obviously don't see their books unless they're an IPO, unless they're publicly listed, to the same extent. But like everybody thought 100 Thieves were doing really well, and they've obviously had severe layoffs, so they clearly weren't as close to being sustainable as everybody thought. I think you're right in that when you talk about Korea, you talk about France as well. Their esports market is huge, and that is partly helped because they are able to tap into sponsors that speak that particular language and broadcast to that language, etc. So that makes it easier. Whereas with English, obviously, there's typically an English broadcast wherever you are for whatever esport. So it is more difficult, but I think it's a global problem. I think esports teams are just not sustainable across the board. So I don't think it matters necessarily where they are in the world. I'm sure there are obviously some exceptions to that, but a vast majority there isn't.
Recently, the Olympics stated that they're throwing up an esports series. I wonder what's your
I've
thoughts
been
on
talking about this on Twitter. We were literally just talking about this before.
Yeah.
I'm going to get told off for this. I think it's a load of rubbish. I went to the Commonwealth Esports Championships. That was very good. Obviously, Tad competed at that, and it had traditional esports titles. It had Rocket League, it had Dota, it had PES, or eFootball, whatever it is now. And it was good. It was a good event. The Olympics event that has been, announced, other than what's Gran Turismo for sim racing, the rest of them are not esports. That's not esports. They clearly have not spoke to anybody in esports about what it means. And I've seen a lot of people suggesting that the games, I've not personally played the games that are available, but that they're basically pay to win games. And it's just not esports. They've made a complete blunder. And they need to either not bother or to correct that. Yeah.
Do you reckon this will have like a huge impact on how esports represented to like the mainstream audience for the Olympics? Because some of them are quite elderly.
I think the people that already think esports is rubbish will continue to think that esports is rubbish, regardless of whether the games that are represented there are actual esports, right? I think the mainstream audience will have their views regardless, but I also don't think that we need sports. I don't know why we care as esports. We do not need the Olympics, in matter of fact. We already have a huge audience, and the likelihood of having tic-tac-bow at Olympics is not going to persuade somebody to come and watch esports. So it's kind of a bit of an irrelevant thing. If they do it well, like the Commonwealth, then great, but if not, then it's kind of pointless. I'll take one more and then I'll move on, because otherwise we could be here a while.
So obviously esports it's a very lucrative business right now, but I see it as like Riot or any company who is running the live events, they can make millions on it, because Riot in Worlds last year, they sold seats for about 5-10 grand each for front row and finals. So do you think these sort of numbers that are coming in for the Pacific company that run the event are messing around with the numbers that are expected for the other esports companies?
Yeah, I think the publishers are making money. So Riot, whoever, Epic, whatever the publisher is, I think they're making a lot of money. For reasons that you just said. I know that MSI tickets were ridiculously expensive as well, and people and they've sold out. So obviously they're doing something right. I think that they need to help the teams out as well, right? So it's all well and good spending 5-10 grand on a ticket, but the teams are not seeing any of that. And if there's no teams to compete at the events, then we're going to go very backwards in esports. So, I think there needs to be a correction on the publisher's part as well. But they're clearly making a lot of money at the moment.
And do you think with FaZe going down as well, my opinion on FaZe is that there was very content created. The people followed them because people like Tifa was on there, famous people was on there with FaZe next to their name. They didn't really connect to esports much. It was more on the YouTube front. So when Fortnite died or whatever, because that's all they were known for. Their esports scene didn't branch off into the other games that FaZe did. So then as Fortnite died and those content creators went to different games, so did FaZe as a whole. Do you agree with that, or?
I don't agree with you that FaZe was just Fortnite. I think FaZe have had a huge history in Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, loads of different games, Rocket League. They are a huge brand. However, I think, how to phrase this nicely, I think their content creators and their owners are complete idiots. I think they come across that way. Yeah, yeah. I just think they are YouTube personalities, and that's great to watch. And obviously, there's a lot of revenue in that for sure, and that's why they have such a big fan base. However, are they business savvy when they're promoting the things that they promote? Do they have the morality? You know, talking about drug use, promoting that. The things that they post on social media sometimes, I'm not sure that's appropriate for the audience that we're trying to promote to, but everybody does esports different, right? Every brand is different. They want to be the bad boys to some extent. But I think there are bigger problems than Fortnite is why FaZe is currently struggling. They won't cease to exist by any stretch of the imagination because they're too big. They're almost too big to fail at this point. But they're having bigger problems because of leadership for me. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to hand over to you now, and then we'll take a short break just for everyone to get some fresh air. Yeah, all yours.
I hope when you talk about me nicely that it sounds nicer than idiotic.
I don't refer to you as an idiot.
I hope not.
Well, only to your face.
Right, anyway, nice to speak to you all. As Jeff said earlier, my name is Ewan Ingram, or I'm better known as Tadpole. I'm a ex-professional Rocket League player. I played Rocket League professionally for about 5 years or so. Played World Championships, played the Commonwealth event as well. And now more in the background, doing management, doing coaching. I'm going to talk to you very briefly, because Jeff's taken up all my time. No, I'm kidding. Very briefly about my own career. The very highs of it, the very lows of it. I pretty much experienced pretty much everything in my own career. I'll try my best to hide my Welsh accent as much as possible. It's very difficult to do. If you don't understand anything, it's normal. But yeah, we'll jump into it. So I, potentially like a lot of you in here, I really struggled through school to find something I really connected to. And I ended up leaving school. I left school in 2016, and I was completely without a plan. So I didn't want to go to university because that sounded awful. I ended up working 12-hour night shifts in Amazon, and if anyone wants to do that, I advise you not to. And yeah, I was really lost for a purpose, and I fell into the generic. I was working, I was playing games, and I ended up really falling into being a good Rocket League player, which didn't last very long, but here we are. But no, I realized I was one of the best players for Rocket League on PlayStation 4 at the time, and used the money that I was making working at Amazon to buy my first PC. And I did really fall into that whole side of things, and I was not financially stable at the time. And with the switch to PC, I realized that I could compete well. And I know there's a lot of you potentially in this room that have probably wanted to look at competitive esports as a player, as potentially a coach. And I don't know how best to describe it. It is a mess. It is really difficult to get into. It's really difficult to stay there. And yeah, I think my own story within that is very typical of esports. So I went to my first LAN event, which is the picture at the top that you can see. That is DreamHack Leipzig 2018. It's my first LAN event I ever went to. I took my dad with me because I couldn't drive to the airport. And it was I went there, got seeded in a group with the best team in North America and second best team in Europe, and got absolutely demolished on stage. And I absolutely loved it, which is going to sound really ridiculous to a lot of you. But anyone who's ever tried playing a tournament, you'll probably understand how that feels. And it's for me, I realized, much like the title says, that I went from not having anything to really concentrate on, and I really fell into esports, and all of a sudden it was a potential. Now, esports to me and my last 5 years, to put it bluntly, really saved my whole growth into an adult, because I didn't have a plan. And as opposed to being in a dead-end job doing whatever is stocking shelves, I really fell into this and I really loved it, which I never expected to happen. So the picture you can see top right is Insomnia. I know a lot of you have potentially been to Insomnia before. That is Insomnia in 2018. It was the first tournament I ever won. And I spoke to my parents around that time. And I'm very, very fortunate to have the family that I have. And I asked them to give me the space to go and do it. And I left my job in Amazon and asked them to give me a couple of months to see if I could pursue esports. Now, a lot of people won't have that potential. A lot of people will have to work alongside it. A lot of people, just like yourself in the police and doing it on the side, it's a difficult industry to get into, potentially because it's so new. You know, to all of us, even to everyone on the stage, esports is still a new concept. It's not something that's been around decades like your movie scene, your proper media scene, your music scene. Esports is a brand new industry, and it's something that everyone on this stage is still learning. So yeah, one of the big things that esports gave me, which I'm incredibly grateful for, that you can see in that picture there, is a whole new family. As someone that, to put it bluntly, wasn't exactly sociable in school, didn't have a lot of friends, it gave me a new connection to people. It's something that I could talk about, much like everyone in this room. It's something that hopefully everyone has in common, is just this interest. You know, if for nothing else, you've got that interest in this. And it led me to meeting new friends. You know, meeting Jeff, who I met, 5 years ago, I think?
I was trying to get him to work for me for about 5 years.
I ended up later in 2018 promoting into the RLCS, which is obviously the top tier at the time of Rocket League. It happened very quickly. It was a 3-4 month period, and I got launched into the RLCS, which was the top 8 teams in Europe. I very quickly came to understand how close esports is to real athletes during that period. And it was the first taste I ever had of struggling to separate the esports side of things, the competing side of things, from real life. As much as everyone, and Jeff will know this, having played himself, as much as everyone will try to separate the real life and the in-game stuff, they always link together. It's impossible to remove that link, and you can always nullify it, but it'll always be there. This is something that I've spoken to Alex a lot, and he'll go into a bit later on, but the things outside of the game, if you're a competitive person, even if the impact is minimal to massive, it will always be there. One of the proudest days I ever had was the promotion tournament day to RLCS, which was the biggest day. I'd worked 3 years to get to that point. And the run-up for that was grueling. We were playing tournaments every single day. We were playing the best part of 10, 12 hours of Rocket League a day. And in the run-up to that, my grandmother fell terminally ill with cancer. And I ended up having her pass away on the same day as that promotion tournament. And obviously being a big esports event, it's not something that can be moved. And it really tied into me very early on that you can't stop life outside of esports. They are not separated. They are very much one and the same. And that was the toughest day of my life. And to be honest, back then, that's why I'm proud to be with these people on the stage. I could have really done with one of these people on the stage. I could have done with an organization around me. I could have done with that safety blanket to really go through something like that. So my career, luckily we got through that promotion tournament. Ironically, one of the best days of my career. And I hit all the heights you could possibly hit in Rocket League. I qualified for the World Championships, which was out in New York. And things, again, this was very quickly, this was over the space of a year. I went from being a bubble player, not really being well known, into World Championships. I'm still, to this day, which is something I'm very proud of, the only Welsh player to ever play at the World Championships for Rocket League. And everything, yeah, it happened very quickly. The picture you can see at the top is actually when I was on stage. I'm on the orange side of the screen, which is us against Cloud9. Cloud9 at the time were world champions for Rocket League. It was the first game at Worlds, which was obviously not exactly a nice draw. And things were incredible for that period of time. And again, to tie back to it, the support I had from my family, Big Dad Paul there, who was like my bodyguard the whole time. But even from that respect, my family, when I started that journey in esports, had no idea about it. They knew absolutely nothing about the world I wanted to be involved in. They had no interest in it whatsoever. And that's something that a lot of people in this room might actually understand, is that the people around you might not actually care. And that's sometimes how it is. We all have different interests. I'm very lucky that my family are sports fans. I'm very lucky that the game I went into, Rocket League, is obviously very football-based. And because of that, my family took to it really, really well. And because it was simple to understand, this is something that we said in regards to the Olympics and the Commonwealth as well. You know, if we were to have esports at the Olympics, I think you'd have to stick to games that the general audience would understand, right? Rocket League is ball, car, try and score, and that's pretty much it. That's it as a concept.
You've just undersold your whole career.
I have. I have. So I worked, as of the time I made the World Championships, I'd been playing Rocket League for around 4 years. That included 6 to 8 hours pretty much every day. That is a very unsustainable level of growth and a very unsustainable days, which is something that me and Alex work on day to day, which he'll go into after myself. I've got to put there as a note, it's the eternal grind to improve. Any of you that have played games would have fallen into this at some point, where it's just, the next rank you want to get to, it's just that, if you're on a loss streak in ranked, you just don't want to end on a loss, you're playing to win. All of this little stuff that everyone falls into. And when you're a professional player, it's very easy to do that to an extreme level. It's very easy to do that to I've been playing Rocket League for 9 hours straight and I haven't had any food, which I know a lot of people, even to this day, it happens to. And I really fell into that after the World Championships. I won't go into the extreme details of it, but immediately after the World Championships, the team I was on disbanded. And at the time, RLCS was a locked-in system. You had to promote into it, which meant that my career, the 4 years that I put into that career, completely reset in an evening. All the work, at that point, I'd put in about 9,000 hours into Rocket League, and that completely reset within an evening. And that is the esports that I'm hoping, with the work of some good people in esports, will disappear. I'm hoping that people will never have to go through stuff like that again, because it's difficult. But in the same line of thought, that's where esports is as well. It is right now unstable, both for players, organizations, everybody, and everyone's on the same boat of trying to push that towards stability. One of the things that I really struggle with the most in my career, which is the bottom point there, is the trap of no self-improvement. And by that, I mean in real life. So I played this career for 6 years. I passed my driving test. I'm 25 now. I passed my driving test September, which is something I wanted to do 6, 7 years ago and just never go around to it. Why? Because I was preoccupied playing Rocket League, pretty much. And it's the same thing across the board, where it's only been since retiring last year that I've put time into myself, my life outside of esports. If I had done that during my time playing the game, my career would have lasted years longer. I don't doubt that at all. It's something we've spoken about quite a lot. If you are ever going to look at being a professional player in anything, it needs to be done right. Esports is no different to that at all. And that's something I've only learned recently, and I wish I'd learned it sooner. I'm going to play these videos really quickly. They're just to show you the real positive sides of my family and how lucky I was to have them by my side. The first video is the day we promoted to the RLCS. And I haven't checked these videos. There's potentially a very light swear word, but I'm 99% sure it'd be perfectly fine. So this is their reaction to us making the
9 by 10 pull. Now Alpha takes his turn over to Bluey. But now Ronicky popping it back up. Bluey flipping back.
Come on, boys!
Is able to pick some up.
Come on.
Now Bluey with a chance. Pops it up in the air, doesn't chase it. Alpha
Let's just get a buzzer goal as well, just to get on the tip. Come on.
Tadpole with the follow-up. Alpha passing it up
We're
to
ready.
Demo.
I'm so ready.
Going for the shot that
Here
was
we
saved
go.
by Speed. Now Speed with a miss.
Come on.
Alpha set
Come
up
on,
to
Taz.
Bluey, and Bluey.
Come on,
He hits
come on,
his
come on.
shot. Savage within one.
20 seconds. One
Big
goal.
mistake coming out here
Come on,
from
boys,
Speed.
just
Trying to
keep
get
the
a big
composure.
clear from it, but he plays it a little bit too fast for his own good. Ends up missing, and it makes it right in the lap of Savage. They put it back within 21 seconds left. They do have an extra life in their back pocket, but if they could reverse sweep this, they would be ecstatic to make it into the RLCS, something that they purposely remade a team for. Well, this is where they will be tested. Final 10
They've
seconds.
done it. Yes! Yes! Woo! Come on! Yes! Woo! Yes! Yes! Come on! Woo! Yes! 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 Oh my God! Yes! Yes! Yes, yes, yes! Yes!
Unsurprisingly, getting barked at by the dog. How do I get off this thing now? Oh, I've ruined the whole presentation. Hold on. But yeah, I'm very fortunate to have them. That is about 8-9 months on from them not having any clue about esports, and all of a sudden they're there screaming their lungs out about it. And yeah, I'll show you this one, which is the same thing, but us making worlds a couple of months later. Locals. I was cleaning up confetti for about 7 months, I'll be honest. But yeah, they are people that I inherently had no interest in esports, and they traveled with me to LAN events. They were there the whole time. If I needed to do things on certain days, they did that for me. Not everyone has that, and that's the reality of it. I think the goal for me as a person, the goal for a lot of people in esports is to get to a point where everyone's families react that way. And those videos, both my sister was the one that recorded them. I don't want to play it again, PowerPoint.
Yeah, press it down again. It just plays on again.
There we go. They were there the whole time. They were really, really supportive of me through my career. I'm incredibly grateful for that, and I don't think I'd have had the career I had without them. I will always implore people, and I'll always hold myself to this standard, to educate people about esports. It's something that has given me a new lease of life, and it's something that I've been able to share with my family, and it's not something a lot of people can do. So around this time last year, I made the decision to retire from Rocket League. One of the big reasons for that, and again, something that me and Alex have spoken about a lot, was the life impact, the daily impact of putting that much time into a video game, not having a social life, not improving my own life. And I made that decision on the backing of that. The last tournament I ever played was the Commonwealth Esports Championships, which was actually based in Nottingham, and then the finals were in Birmingham. That was in August. We ended up winning that tournament, so obviously a nice end to my own career. Again, as you can see at the bottom, my family all came to that. They knew it was my last tournament, so obviously quite a big hurrah to end off. Got to 3-0 England in the finals. Sorry to all of you. But I knew that it was my time to leave esports, and I'm incredibly grateful for the skills that I've picked up through that. And a lot of people might think, what skills do you pick up from sitting there and playing a game for 8 hours a day? And you'd be right to think that way. For me, the interpersonal skills I picked up to work with a team, to work with a coach, to improve myself within that game. You know, even small things like doing media, going in front of cameras, doing interviews and that sort of stuff has set me up for the career I now have, which is with these guys. And it's really helped me. My playing career is probably the biggest positive I could ever have for now coaching the team that I coach, simply for the basis of preventing them falling into the same mistakes I made. I'll end off with one really important thing for me. Esports for me has given me, as I said, a very new lease of life. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. I hope people understand through that a little bit that if you're ever going to play games to a high level, if it's something you want to do, even if that's just high rank in a game, it needs to be done alongside development outside of the game. It's the most important bit of advice I'll give to anyone after 6 years of esports. And yeah, thank you for your time hearing what I have to say.
What we'll do is we'll take a couple of questions again just for Tad, and then we'll take a 2-minute break, just go get some fresh air and come back in, because sitting in the same spot, exact same reason that we tell our players, it's never good. So, yeah, and any quick questions for Tad, and then we'll take a break.
What advice would you give to a player in a tier 3, tier 2 scene to make it to that pro level?
I think the biggest bit of advice I would ever give to someone is to be critical of themselves. This is something I go through with all 3 teams. I currently coach 3 teams at the minute, which is our RLCS team. We have a women's team, which is the best women's team in the world for Rocket League, and I coach Warwick University as well. And especially the women's team and the Warwick team are obviously a bit below the RLCS level. And this is a question, obviously, they ask me quite often. It's very easy. I don't know what game you play yourself or what game anyone in here plays, but if it's a team environment, which obviously 95% of them are, it is very, very easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong, or this is the problem, this is the problem. If you are in a team environment game, the only real thing you should ever concentrate on is yourself. And I have seen so many careers wasted, especially in Rocket League, from players that don't have that ability to be self-analytical. So I think that is the main bit of advice I'd give to anybody, is to always look internally. If there's any form of issue, if you're losing a round in Valorant, if you're losing a game of League, whatever it is, review it yourself. Everyone's capable of this as well. Self-coaching is something that not a lot of players can do in esports, and it's something I'd put top tier.
Any other questions?
All happy?
Yeah, cool. If you want to take 2 minutes, just stretch your legs, get some fresh air, and then we'll come back in and we'll carry on.
Are we good? Can you hear me? You got me? Super, super, super. Are we up on here? Do I need to press something? Okay, there we go. Super. Hello, everyone. I'll start. My name's Alex. My job title is Head of Performance. So going straight into it, it's, as Jeff said at the beginning, it's pretty much everything outside of the game. My background was traditional sports, coached a bunch of different traditional sports, but mostly tennis. So coached tennis for 12, 13 years, something like that. Qualifications in nutrition, PT, couple of coaching badges, and then I did sports management at uni and specialised in the final year for performance coaching. So my world has always been traditional sports and working with athletes in the traditional sports sense, and then I sort of transitioned that relatively quickly, actually, into esports. So there's sort of some main areas that I really work with staff and players on, and the first one is the painful buzzwords of health and well-being, but sort of to echo the sentiment that Tad was talking about, we need to, in the esports industry, and it's getting there, I think, I don't know what you guys think, but slowly and steadily we're getting there where we start to treat pro gamers as esports athletes, which I think is a really, really important change that I'll come on to later. But the first main area, as I say, is health and well-being. So Resolve is, I think, one of maybe 2, maybe 3 in the UK, and then maybe 10 in the world, or at least Europe, let's say, that have someone in post that will look after things like this. So it is unusual, but just because it doesn't happen doesn't mean it shouldn't happen, of course. So for health and well-being, I concentrate on nutrition, sleep, exercise, and injury prevention. All of this, for me, comes under the banner of cognitive function. How do we make sure that esports athletes, how do we make sure their brain is working at the absolute best that it can? When you look at traditional sports, you can only train for so long. When you heard Tad talking about 6 to 8 hours, if anyone knows the League of Legends sort of pro scene, that is maybe doubled, 12, 16, isn't too uncommon in League. When it comes to traditional sports, your body will give in at some point. You can't keep playing football. Your cardio system will fail, you won't have any energy left in the tank. Esports doesn't have that necessarily. Our bodies don't fail, it's our mind that fails first, right? So looking at these sorts of things is vitally, vitally important for, as Tad also said, the longevity of career, but making sure that when you do perform, you can perform at your absolute best every single time. The thing I will say is, I don't know about you guys, just out of interest, show of hands, how many people have played traditional sports for a period of time in their life? Great. Which is really bizarre because most people that we work with, that isn't the case. So the baseline of what I need to do is really surprisingly low. This was the first big lesson for me. I'd come from the traditional sports world, talking about diet, sleep, exercise. I had to reduce sort of expectations and what I was talking about to its absolute basics. And that was the sort of first big learning. So for nutrition, it's super simple, keeping to what I would call sort of a perfect plate of a carb, a protein, and a portion of fruit or veg. Sleep is pretty generic, 7 to 9 hours. We look at sleep inhibitors, we look at sleep hygiene. For people like yourselves, I'm assuming the majority of you are under 20, so that number goes up a little bit. The 7 to 9 turns into more 8 to 10. And then exercise. People tend to have the mindset that exercise is running a marathon, bench pressing 4 times your body weight. It doesn't need to be that. And that's the first thing that I like to dispel when I'm working with esports athletes is it can be really simple. Getting yourself moving is the first step. And then injury prevention. We look at things like mobility. We look at stretching to make sure that obviously people are sat for 6 to 8, 12 to 16 hours. We look at those things as well. Posture and how the desk looks and how the desk is set up ergonomically is really important as well. Okay, the next sort of part is preparation. So I'm not a sports psychologist. I have to say this every single time I work with someone. I'm not a trained sports psychologist. However, I like to think, and hopefully sports psychologists that I've spoken to, they also agree with me, that just because you haven't trained formally in sports psychology doesn't mean you can't learn and use those things in practice, right? So frankly, most of my job is regurgitating what far more intelligent people say. So this is where it comes in really handy. Lots of reading, lots of learning, but we use tactics like visualization, mental rehearsal, big in traditional sports. If anyone has ever watched MMA or football, visualization is massive, particularly in those two sports. We use breath work all the time. Anxiety is a huge thing. If you remember as well, most of the people that are esports athletes, generally speaking, haven't gone through tertiary education like you guys in university and things like that. They tend to be 16, fresh out of school, maybe don't even go to college, maybe not so much anymore, of course, but essentially, these are kids that haven't had an awful lot of life experience. So when it comes to playing in competitive environments, going into ranked even, or even being on stage, anxiety is a massive, massive, massive hurdle for them. Breath work is one way that we look to sort of counteract that. Mindfulness is another one, tied in similarly to breath work, but meditation-based techniques. This, of course, doesn't mean sitting cross-legged, humming like this. It's more just being present, mind and body in the same place, same time sort of thing. And that's a really important aspect as well. Then we sort of get into the routines, right? So pre, intra, and post-match routines. And keeping similarities between them, not overcomplicating things, making sure everything's nice and easy, nice and simple. And a little bit of habit creation. How do we make habits? How do we sort of stick to them is really important. So what does it look like pretty much from the time that you go to sleep or that you're attempting to go to sleep? That would be up until your match starts. That would be the pre-match routine. What do you do in that time? Are you moving? Are you sat in darkness? Do you have 14 hours of sleep and neck a Monster or a Red Bull? Or do we try and do some valuable things that will help your performance? The intra is the during. So what are we thinking about? Are we using breath work? Is our posture good? Do we feel confident? And then post is obviously analysis, like Tad spoke about, being self-critical, self-analytical is really, really important. Then this is the bit that I sort of spoke about when I first started speaking, and apologies if I am rifling through really quick. I just want to make sure that you guys aren't bored, but also that we hit our times effectively. So mindset, as I said to you, esports athletes. This is something that I'm having to tackle an awful lot, is getting people out of this kid in a bedroom playing video games sort of approach, which we're getting there as time goes by, but having to really help people understand that, for example, a sportsman does not just play their own sport, right? Or a sports person, sorry. So if you look at a martial artist, if you look at Conor McGregor, the classics, John Jones, if anyone watched UFC this weekend, there was a big fight. But John Jones doesn't just do kickboxing. He doesn't just do jiu-jitsu. He won't just do wrestling. He will work in sports psychology. He'll do S&Cs, strength and conditioning. He might do swimming. There's a plethora of things that a sports person will take into their sports game, and that's what we're trying to promote when it comes to esports as well. Same sort of thing, a business owner, someone like Jeff won't hone in the COO. He won't hone in just on finance, for example. He won't hone in just on marketing, for example. There'll be a lot of things. And for you guys at uni as well, I'm sure you keep getting told about wider reading. Does that ring a bell? Lots of wider reading? Yeah. Okay, I had the same thing. And when I was at uni, I was like, yeah, all right, wider reading, all right. But this is kind of the wider reading aspect of things, right? What else can we bring into our game that's going to help performance? What's going to help propel us to the sort of next level, the upper echelons of Europe in this case, right? And the world for our women's team. So the mindset is a really important shift that we've been working super hard to sort of change as time has gone by. I guess the other thing, I think it's going to go to Q&A, yeah. The other thing that I do a lot at Resolve at the minute is working very closely with Tad, with my coaching experience. When Jeff said, how do we say this nicely, I'm going to have to think about my words here. Esports coaches are, as a whole, not very good. They tend to be, in the traditional sports world, what you would call an analyst. So they know lots about the game, but how do we sort of make sure that information is given correctly? Learning difficulties, if that's a thing, which is relatively rife in esports as well. Different learning styles. How do we make sure the information is communicated effectively and efficiently? keeping to certain things like not overloading people's brains and giving them too much information, too much to think about. So working with coaches is something that I've done an awful lot of work in, and helping coaches become, well, I was going to say better coaches, but becoming coaches is the sort of crux of that. So hopefully you guys resonate with some of this sort of stuff that I've been saying. But I think this is hopefully where the industry is trending towards as opposed to away from, and the realization that these things make a massive, massive difference. The esports athletes, the individuals, the pro players that will look into these things, that will consider these things, are going to be the top level pros. You're not going to see the best player in the world slamming Doritos and Mountain Dew for much longer, right? And I think as time progresses, hopefully that will become less of a stereotype.
It's a good job we're not after any energy drink sponsors. You've slammed 3.
Yeah, dude, I saw some monsters in the crowd earlier as well. But, yeah, hopefully that all makes sense. I know that was a lot of information in a very short period of time. So I thought I would spend more time, if you had the questions, answering those, if anyone has them. If not, we can obviously move on. But yes, hopefully that was all good. Cool.
Hi.
Hello, mate.
So I was wondering what your thoughts were on sponsorships with esports teams, because a lot of them are energy drink companies or gaming chair companies, which just destroy your back. So I was wondering, I don't know the sponsorships you guys have particularly, but what are your views on those sponsorships?
Yeah, so a bit of a catch-22, I suppose. If it's life or death and the company goes under or they take a monster deal, you know, there's people there with jobs that have bills, so it's really, really tough. Ideal world, I would like us to not be intrinsically tied to those sorts of sponsors. I had this conversation because I moved out of my office to working from home recently, and I said to everyone on a staff call, I was like, what is a gaming chair? Like, what is that? Why is it not just an office chair? Why are we not using office chairs? Why does it need to look like it's designed for a car? So ergonomically, I wouldn't recommend gaming chairs. I would just go for office chairs. Mine was IKEA, so those are particularly good. I think as I said, it's really, really tough. Inherently, energy drinks aren't, I couldn't with good faith say inherently they're a bad thing. Like caffeine is not inherently bad. The sugars and the additives that go with it obviously are detrimental. But the reality is caffeine is a performance enhancer. It is a stimulant, and it does have a plethora of things that can impact performance positively. And there's a bunch of research that ties in with that. So yes, it's hard. They're not inherently the best things, but if it was life or death, what are you going to do, I guess, right?
I think just to touch on that as well, like from my perspective, when we're speaking to brands, especially around sort of like chairs or food and beverage or whatever it is, like about sponsorship, I do involve AJ in those conversations because I want to make sure that we're going to promote these things with our players, right? And I think, you know, I touched upon transparency before, and we want to promote brands that we genuinely believe are good for our players and our community. So Alex is involved in those conversations as well, although he's absolutely killing me here with chairs and energy drinks and everything else, so yeah.
Sorry, just another question if that's okay. Have you faced any problems where the health of the player is at risk, I suppose, but that, fixing that problem would then be detrimental to their performance, such as maybe they prefer to sit a certain way or hold the controller in a certain way, that would cause problems with their hands or their wrists?
Yeah, so some things are a given, is a good point that you make. The way they sit is like a big thing. I don't know if you guys want to do some reading on some stuff and you haven't seen it. EG and Danny, the League of Legends team and player, this is a big story at the moment. I highly recommend looking into that. That's really interesting from this standpoint. Yes, I have experienced things like that. The most important thing for me, and the word that keeps coming up for the last 5-6 years I've been working in esports, is balance. And look, if that's the way we're going to sit, if we have to have a Red Bull because that is something that you, whether it's psychological or not, you think helps performance, okay, how can we best counteract those things? So sometimes I've found trying to stop something isn't always the most beneficial route, but trying to put that into a more beneficial routine as a whole can be way better, right? So if you are going to sit like this, hunched over, can we do certain stretches and mobility work and use a certain, like a massage gun, for example, or a massage belt to help sort of correct those muscular imbalances or any pain that you might have through that scenario. So for me, it's all about working it into like a holistic sort of plan for an individual and not just tunneling on bad needs to go. It's adding in what can counteract and be good, if that makes sense. Yeah? Super.
Hi there. What's your kind of view on performance enhancers in terms of Adderall, etc., and how doping in esports kind of needs to be regulated compared to like real life sports with like obviously the Russian ban and everything? Do you think that esports as an industry needs to start looking into like doping properly, or is it literally they can't kind of really interact with it because of possible learning difficulties, etc.?
Right, so I think that was the route that my mind automatically went to is out of the maybe 100 plus players that I've worked with for the last 5 years, and you guys have probably had probably greater numbers, honestly, I would say there is a huge percentage of those individuals that suffer with autism or dyslexia or different things like that. So the issue will be is as the world progresses, we're seeing a lot more ADHD diagnoses and things like that. So it's a really tough one. Stopping Adderall full stop is going to mean people with certain learning difficulties are probably not going to be able to perform. So how do we disseminate those sorts of things? Is the GP truly looking into, does this person have ADHD, or is it shut up and leave the office sort of thing? It's really tough. We had a look at some of the TOs to see if they have any sort of comments on things like Adderall and things like that. We haven't found anything to say that you can't take it. I believe that it was with doctor's permission, of course, but how easy it is to get those things, I don't even know anymore. So it's a really tough one. I would defer to whatever the relevant tournament organizer would say 9 times out of 10, but it happens a lot, I think, especially at the elite level. I think a lot of people I wouldn't call it doping, but are using drugs for their relevant illnesses that happens to also be a potential PED, so it's a really tough one. One more? Yeah. Okay.
In terms of your health and well-being experience, what would you say or recommend in terms of trying to fix your mental, so to speak, when you're playing games? Because certain like multiplayer games, you feel like you could be doing really well, and other factors let you down, and it kind of like it's just a spiral after that. You kind of just keep playing and playing, and then slowly start to use the term int, and it's like just completely ruin your game experience. By the time you clock off, you're like, oh well, this was crap.
So you
by the
play
end of
League
it.
then, right?
I do not play League. I'm a Valorant player, so it's even worse. But
okay. It's a tough one. There's certain tactics that you can utilize that I found to be most beneficial. This is through my experience of working with pros. Break taking is the first one. So playing in sets of like 3 to 5 games, no more. Treat it like a traditional sports sort of thing. That can be really beneficial once that set has done. So for example, if you're going to play 3 games, or if you're going to play X amount of games and you're 2-1 down, stop. Stop playing, take a break, and take a lengthy break. I would also recommend taking a break in between every game. Obviously, if it's Rocket League, that's a bit different because those are like 5-minute games. But for League, Valorant, things like that, where they're slightly longer, regular break taking is really important. Looking after all of the things that I spoke about on there is also really important. Diet, sleep, and exercise. Those are a really good sort of backstop for anger, frustration, tilt, whatever the words you want to utilize are. Breath work is the other one. Whenever I say this, it makes me sound kind of like some sort of yogi that goes and lives out in the woods, but I promise I'm not. Breath work is really, really important. So I really like 4-1-4, which is 4 seconds in, hold for 1 second, breathe out for 4 seconds. But there's so many others, box breathing, 5-7, there's hundreds. Break taking, breath work, generally looking after your well-being are really important. But I tend to find for example, with League is like automatically going in with chat disabled, so you don't have to listen to the Muppets that are on your team or on the enemy team. That's always a really good one. But yeah, it's real, and tilt happens. I mean, our players are actually pretty good now.
I think from a playing perspective, I think one of the most powerful things, the most powerful recognitions I always managed to do myself was just the recognition of, I've never seen a tilted player play better.
Yeah.
Like your 100% is always going to be at a time where you're emotionally regulated. I think just that recognition of, oh, I'm getting frustrated, I'm going to play worse, is a very basic way of looking at it. But, like mid-val game or like an overtime in Valorant especially, is like a time where that 1% tilt is enough to swing a game one way or the other. So I think that, just as a fact in itself, is a really important one to have as well.
Yeah, normally the first step is like awareness, like being aware that you're tilted is like the first step where you can actually do something about it. If you're not aware that you're tilted, I mean like in here aware, not just like you're typing away sort of thing. If you're not aware, you can't make a change. So bringing awareness to it, realizing, oh, okay, I'm tilted. What's the right route for me here? Is it breathwork? Is it stepping away from the game? What can I do? Yeah. But obviously, regulating emotions isn't this like easy fix where you just take a couple breaths and you're all good again. So it can be tough. It's different for everyone, I would say.
Sweet.
Yes. All good?
Yeah.
Super.
So yeah, my name's Matt. I run the socials here at Resolve. First off, I'll just tell you a bit about my journey. I started out on YouTube in 2018 where I was playing Fortnite and streaming and making videos on Fortnite death runs and that sort of thing.
You haven't said... Right, Matt's a bit of a dark horse here, right? Because it came out afterwards that he'd made ridiculous amounts of money from Fortnite, which he never let anybody know.
I still didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's dark horse.
But yeah, as you can see, there was a massive spike. I think that was sort of in early 2020 where my YouTube sort of took off. I was getting a whole load of views and obviously the money was raking in, it was nice. But sadly that did come to an end and I knew this was sort of COVID, the start of COVID. I knew that I needed some sort of financial backing because I'd left school at that point. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I enjoyed playing games, enjoyed making content. So I started to look at esports and I was applying to a whole load of teams and that sort of thing in esports. And I got nowhere because essentially I had no social media experience before until a tournament organizer called WePlay were looking for a social media person for their English socials. They're a Ukrainian tournament organizer. They mainly do Dota tournaments. They hosted the Animajor, which was, I think, in total the second most viewed major in Dota history, which is pretty cool. And I had the privilege of working with a team on the socials around that time, which was, I got a lot of experience from it. It was great. It was nice to interact with all the big teams that went, Team Secret, T1, and all those big teams. It was nice to work and interact with them. And then sort of February time, I thought I wanted to change. I liked working, in a team, but I wanted to, mainly work on my own. And that's when I saw Jeff advertising for a social media position at Resolve. And as an F1 fan at that point, seeing a team like Williams partnered with an esports team, it was a no-brainer. I wanted to work there. And thankfully, Jeff has trusted me since then with the socials. And yeah, so now I've been at Resolve for a year gone last week.
Happy anniversary, mate.
Thank you. So yeah, that's how I am where I am today. In terms of social media, some people think it's all just, posting memes on Twitter and that sort of thing, when in actual fact, there's a lot more that probably isn't mentioned as much. One of the big things is live coverage. I sit there during all the game days, posting results, posting the highlights, that sort of thing. In terms of day-to-day, I also make TikToks. I have meetings with the team to find out what's going on, that sort of thing. I help with Jonas in planning announcement videos for players and upcoming content, that sort of thing. I track the analytics of all the Resolve socials, as well as we also track staff, players, to ensure that they're posting, because they're just as important to be posting on socials as us. They are part of our brand, so we want them to post and give us as much exposure as possible without sounding too selfish. I can't read it from here. But yeah, when we're at boot camps, that sort of thing, I also help Jonas with filming the videos, holding camera, that sort of thing. And as a passion, I enjoy photography, so that also helps out in terms of what I do. In terms of posting on Twitter each day and whatnot, it's also trying to find a balance of how to create fun ways to promote our products, our merch, that sort of thing. So we recently had our Resolve decals out in the shop, so finding ways to try and get people to buy them without necessarily just saying go buy them. Yeah, and Tad, could you just press the? I think if you press down, it will just play it. Will it? Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
Breezy, can you check the washing? Sure, mate. Completely washed.
So we actually filmed that a few weeks ago at our first boot camp. We wanted to try and create new ways to, post about our upcoming games and that sort of thing, rather than just posting a nice fancy graphic. And that we actually did, quite well. It got like 100 likes, which was good for us.
For a pre-game,
yeah. For a pre-game.
My favourite thing to do in the world, so.
Yeah, part of that as well is, sometimes results don't go our way. The most recent regional, we went bottom of the group, unfortunately. So I decided to flip the group upside down and say that we topped the group, which, as you can see by the likes, it did pretty well. So it's just always trying to be adaptable to what we work with. Unfortunately, we don't always get a team that wins every week.
Make them win more, Tad.
But yeah.
Open to any questions for in regards to socials, if anybody's got any.
We'll do the Q&A quick one after, because I know we got exactly 5 minutes. So I'll go through some of my bits. But what we'll do is, in 5 minutes, we'll move to this side. So if you have any questions you want to ask individually, if you're sort of any personal questions or shy, you'll be able to ask us one-on-one. And I'm sure at some point in the next couple of weeks, or hopefully next month, what we'll do is an online session on Twitch, all of us, where you can pop in and ask any other questions. Because usually when over these kind of sessions, what happens? Yeah, these.
You didn't tell us this.
No, I didn't. Right. So my name is Jonas, head of creative. By the way, head of creative, not a real title. I don't know what I do. I just do. I make things pretty. That's pretty much all I really do. Started as a freelance photographer. The way I got into esports is by creating YouTube content about League of Legends. Disgusting. I know. I'm sorry. I went to work at University of Roehampton, where we started esports scholarships. I think it was first university in higher education in Europe to offer esports scholarships, and the first in the world to offer women in esports scholarships, which I'm incredibly proud of. And then I joined British Esports and Resolve doing content for them. So photos, videos, some of the designs. So if you see some of the ugly designs, that's me. If you see some good designs, that's Wayne, our graphic designer. My presentation essentially was all about going from how we started the content with having no access to players, no access to spaces like confetti stage or anything like that, and going all the way up to having talent, having budgets, writing scripts, having actually famous casters and things like that, and sort of that step-by-step process. But we just had a chat with Jen. In the next couple of weeks or next month, what we'll do is we'll run another session either online or here in person, where I'll be able to go more in depth about all of this. How do we do editing, color grading, script writing, bleeping all of the content because half of my job is bleeping whatever these guys say. I'll quickly go through and I'll...
Very good today.
You have been very good today. This is impressive. So I'll quickly go through. So some of these videos, like this video, for example, is with our... I'm not going to play some of them. I'm not playing this one. But it's all about sort of going the whole journey from starting with nothing, no budgets, no anything, to where I'm fortunate now having some budget for fancy cameras, fancy lights, and things like that. But even though we do have fancy cameras, fancy lights, sometimes we end up intentionally degrading the content and making it, fuzzy, making out of focus and things like that, which I'll show you one of the examples, which was the content we did for our Fortnite X-Squeeze. Squeeze. We did the announcement, we used fancy cameras, everything was great, but then we decided, you know what, we need something different, and we specifically chose the design style to change the look of it all. I'll get there. This one.
I don't understand. This is the place. It must have escaped. Who are you? Why are you doing this?
Je suis Cyprien Dumonteil, aka X-Wiz, et je vais voler la Coupe du Monde de Fortnite.
There's two takeaways from that video. First of all, do not give esports talent any lines or anything like that. They are usually god-awful in front of the camera and they're awkward. If you can, try create content where they don't speak. They just stand with their arms folded like they always do, the traditional esports pose. Do that. And the other key takeaway, which is something I completely forgot already. So the Rocket League one is a good example, yeah, where we didn't get anyone to, I'll quickly go back to it. It's going to be the last video I'll show. Where this one, where the players didn't have to say a word. We used professional shoutcasters, professional talent to do that. We filmed it at Williams Heritage Museum, which is great. It's scary, filming around like incredibly expensive one-off cars, but it's a lot of fun.
Oh.
No.
Wait, up and up again. And then down. And down again.
Hey.
Oh, nicely done. I was thinking, Cho. Yeah? I reckon that what we need in Rocket League is like a quintessentially British team.
What would that even entail?
I don't know, someone who's in football kit, loves fish and chips.
Yeah. All right. So what about someone proper patriotic?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone really flies the flag.
Nice. Yeah. Good shout. Good shout. Just things that are like posh and fun, like Wimbledon, tennis, strawberries and cream, bits like that. Ooh, that'd be
Nice. And if you're gonna put players like this together, you need a proper coach. You need a detective, somebody to put together the complex mysteries of Rocket League.
Yes, great shout.
This is perfection!
So there's only two types of content in esports, either incredibly high production value content that you'll see from TSM, Optic, and things like that, or cringe content. And finding the fine line between them is incredibly invaluable. Cringe content is where all of the retweets, shares, comments, and interaction on Twitter is. So embrace the cringe. But yeah, that's it. We've been Resolve. Thank you so much. You can find us on where? Twitter. RSVGG. Yep. RSVGG. And we'll do a Twitch stream, yeah, all of us together. If you want, you can ask any more questions. And thank you very much for today.
Yeah, we'll. Yeah, we'll stick around. If anybody's got questions and stuff, then feel free.
I mean, you did a perfect way of closing the event, so this makes what I'm about to do redundant. But I'm going to do it anyway. Once again, folks, a big, big thank you to the team at Williams Resolve. And we will definitely be following up with another opportunity to connect with the team, and specifically with Jonas with regards to some of the content that you've had to quickly pass over, because there's some amazing gems in there that we'd like to unpack, unpick, and something else. I just don't know what to say right now. But yes, thank you so much, and get ready for Gamer this evening. Hopefully you're all ready and strapped in and you've got your tickets. It's going to be incredible. Big thank you once again. Round of applause to roll out. Thank you.